Hey everybody, it's Terensu back again, and it's time for part 2 of exploring the canonicity of Tekken endings. And so let me show you what we've done here in case you missed the first video, and do go check that one out if you haven't seen it. So basically what we're doing is we have, I have a setup here using this nifty little spreadsheet, and last week I did Tekken 1, and so we came to the conclusion that pretty much all the endings in Tekken 1 were canon. There is nothing that can really definitively say they didn't happen, and so with only, let's see, 10 endings, about 7-ish characters, because sub-bosses don't have endings, you could make the argument that all of these were canon. Now there are different canon types and things, so you'll see I have partially canon, not canon, and canon. Just briefly, canon means that it happened. It's definitely part of the Tekken story. Not canon means it didn't happen. Partially canon means that this ending was used as a basis for later story content, but not all of it happened. And there are also 3 types, what I call a vignette, which is, it's basically like a story or a slice of life or a little piece of a character's life. Maybe vignette. I don't know. I never looked up how to pronounce that word. I think it's vignette, actually. But that's just like a little story or thing that happened. Paul's ending is a good example of that in Tekken 1. It's just kind of a what happened to him that they show you as part of his ending. What if? Most of these, if not all of these, will be non-canon unless they're like a dream or something. This is basically a what if this character had succeeded in winning the King of Iron Fist tournament. And we didn't really have any of those in Tekken 1. We're going to get some in Tekken 2 today, so hang tight. And then conclusions are basically, this is what happened after this character won the tournament. A good example would be Kazuya's ending in Tekken 1, because it is the canon ending for Tekken 1. And there are a few other conclusion endings like Law and King that basically shows what went on in their life after the tournament. But today we're on Tekken 2. We've got a lot more videos to get through. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the intro and the arcade intro. Yes, I'm going to do those because I'm a goofy. Anyway, let's watch what is probably my favorite console fighting game opening of all time. Just called the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2. The name of this song is Black Winter Night Sky. It is iconic. The CGI is still dated by today's standards, but it is a huge, massive improvement from what it was like in Tekken 1. This cutscene is iconic. It shows all the characters and their aspirations, why they're in the tournament. The sub-bosses make an appearance. It's just beautiful. It's a wonderful cutscene. I watched it hundreds of times as a kid. We're going to watch it right now. Let's go, Black Winter Night Sky. Ignore the dog barking downstairs. Hey guys, that was, of course, Black Winter Night Sky in the Tekken opening. I was just not only quiet because of the dog barking downstairs, which I made a jump cut to go move into a back room, but to give that ending the respect it deserves, because it's just a childhood classic, man. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, let's go over to our spreadsheet. and take a look. So the arcade intro, this is definitely vignette, whatever. Still haven't figured out how to pronounce that word. I think pretty much everything in there is canon. Now I'm going to write a note here for the sub-bosses. Sub-bosses are kind of there. We don't really learn a whole lot about them. We just kind of see their faces. And I think what that does is just basically say, hey, these guys are important to the plot too. They're not the main characters, so to speak, but they are important to what's going on. I don't see anything in that that's non-canon that is like disproved by other Tekken lore. I think that everything in that happened, and it serves as a great point to introduce the characters of this game. I think that's what that cutscene's main purpose is, and it succeeds in that. So let's go to the arcade intro. It's called Revenge. And this is what would play in the arcade. Again, if you're a young buck or a young lass hopping on to the Tekken series around 6 or 7 or Tag 2, this is what would play in the arcade version, because basically Namco would push the arcade version out as fast as possible. They still do this. And there would be very minimal story content. You might get an intro, and in the old games, this is all you got for the story of Tekken 2. So let's watch it. It's very quick. This is my face when I'm trying to record a video and the dog starts barking downstairs immediately after I start recording. That's it. Extremely quick. I don't even know what you would call this. It's obviously just supposed to signify like Heihachi being mad and wanting revenge for what Kazuya did to him. And this is what I love about the early Tekken series. It's very ambiguously gray. Kazuya and Heihachi are both bad people. I don't care what the retcons in 7 would have you believe. They're both bad people. And, you know, Tekken 2 is just kind of the story of a father getting his revenge on his evil son, but he's not a good guy either. We'll call this another Canon vignette, I don't know. We'll call it another little story type ending. Heihachi being mad, like obviously the Tekken letters and stuff I don't think are flying around in the Tekken universe, but I do think this is just like a symbolization of Heihachi being mad and wanting to get revenge and like introducing the game. So we'll say that that's canon. That's a pretty easy one. It's very short. Let's look at Heihachi's ending called A Son's Fall instead of A Father's Fall. Keep in mind, that's his full-blooded son, just like stone cold. I don't know how he got him to a volcano before he woke up. He must have like drugged him or something, I don't know. It's like, you threw me off a cliff, I'll throw you into a volcano. And then he smiles, just like Kazuya smiled in Tekken 1. So that ending is 100% canon. It is also a conclusion. That is the main ending to Tekken 2. It's the canon ending. Later games support this. Tekken 3 supports this. Tekken 4 supports it. There's just no arguing. That is the canon ending for Tekken 2. So let's go to Paul. Again, Paul is still not a joke character at this point. He's still serious. And this is before Chris Redfield by probably 20 years, so, or 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know how long it was. Anyway, Paul Phoenix, so this ending is just like that. It's a conclusion and canon ending. And so later games explain what happened here. Paul was on his way to the finals to fight Heihachi. I guess it would have been Heihachi. And he got slowed up by that rock slide, and so he had to get off his motorcycle and break it apart. And it caused him to miss the final. He was disqualified. You know, maybe Paul was always a joke character, because it's like he's super strong and can fight with the best, but he just can't seem to be in the right place at the right time. Although later on he does score some losses to Kuma and that type of stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at law. Still martial law at this point. This isn't forest law yet. Flip kicks are kind of a thing in his endings. This phase here. No sound effects in these endings, so we don't get to hear his knuckles crack. That's, if you newer folks, that's one of Paul's win animations. He tries to do that flip and fails. That's where that came from. I'm going to say this is another vignette. It's a little story that there's no reason this didn't happen. Paul still has trouble doing that kick, so I believe that is canon. There's no reason that cannot be canon. And as goofy as Paul and Marshall are, yeah, I'm sure that's true. Let's look at King. This is one of my favorite endings from the game. Let's take a look at this. So King is a recovering alcoholic at this point, and he didn't win the King of Iron Fist tournament too, and he won enough money to leave some prizes. And they got actual kids this time, it looks like. As ridiculous as all that is, I find that extremely wholesome and heartwarming. I mean, it's just like King is a recovering alcoholic. He's like, I failed these children. He leaves them some presents and leaves in shame. And they come out and hug him and are happy to see him anyway because, you know, he's king and he loves them and all that. So just a very heartwarming, wholesome Tekken 1 ending. Heck, maybe King was going to be the protagonist of Tekken at one point since we found out he won 3rd place in Tekken 1. Anyway, this is going to be just like Law's ending. I believe this is mentioned as being canon. King does return to the orphanage shortly after he is killed, unfortunately, by Ogre. This is the end of King 1. It's pretty much the last we see of him, sadly. But just an all-around wholesome, good guy dude. Good Christian man out there taking care of kids in the orphanage. Was also a Spanish priest, I believe. According to Canon, who is a luchador based off a real-life Spanish priest who fought in luchador. All right, let's move on to Yoshimitsu. Worst boy, Yoshimitsu. Back when he was like semi-human still. And Briefcase, if you're watching, I don't subscribe to the theory that it's a different Yoshimitsu each game. I just think he's become more cybernetic over time. So get wrecked, Briefcase. So that was him rescuing Dr. Boskanovich. So he lost his arm or his hand in the first game, and Dr. Boskanovich gave him a mechanical one. I don't think it was spinning fast enough to work like it did in the ending, but we'll go with it. This ending is canon. Dr. Boskanovich and Yoshimitsu go back a long ways because of this, and it is mentioned in later games that he rescued him from Kazuya here. So this is a conclusion ending and it's canon. This has further bearance on the story, the events of this ending do. So let's check out Nina. And this is another wholesome one. I like this one. There's also a little callback to the intro song in there, which is pretty sweet. And Richard Williams is, of course, their father. If you don't look at extra lore sources, you won't know this, but he basically favored Nina over Anna, which is the reason for their sibling rivalry to the extreme. But you can see here Anna is like, no, it's not the time, sis. Let me see Dad. Which is really wholesome that they put their grievances aside for this. You have the nice little shot of them crossing paths. And then she smiles because she knows Anna loves her dad too. Really sweet, really wholesome. I'm going to say that's probably a conclusion canon ending. It probably was after the tournament, after the whole business with Kazuya and then Nina being hired to kill Kazuya. After that was all complete, they probably did go visit their father's grave and decided not to kill each other for that moment. Of course, later on, they end up being in the cryogenic freeze program. So why don't we change this, actually? This is not really a conclusion then. This is probably a vignette because Nina ends up being frozen alongside Anna cryogenically. So, yeah. Unless they went like to do this and then went back, I don't think this is necessarily a conclusion. I think it's just something that happened. Because I believe the reason Nina was frozen or Anna was frozen is because of her failure in to assassinate Kazuya or protect Kazuya, whatever it was. And then I know Anna volunteered, but Nina was pretty much forced into it for some reason. It's really confusing. It was pretty much just the Tekken team's excuse to make Nina and Anna not old for Tekken 3 because they didn't want to have old women out there fighting each other. It's just how Namco rolls. Let's check out Michelle Chang back when she had some relevance to the main story. So that pendant that she has is pretty much the whole reason Kazuya was after her and kidnapped her mother. Heihachi and Kazuya both want that pendant. And supposedly there's some sources out there that say it holds the key to resurrecting Ogre, and that's why Ogre is in the third game, but I don't know. None of the games mention anything about the pendant being tied to Ogre, and you wouldn't even really know what the deal with the pendant was unless you had read like the instruction manual and a few things, because nothing in the game talks about the pendant except this ending. It doesn't talk about it. It just shows they're throwing it in the lake. So anyway, this is a canon conclusion. This definitely happened. Michelle did throw that in the lake to basically stop them from getting after it. I believe it's referenced in later games. After the whole pendant nonsense is resolved, she goes and adopts Julia, and Julia takes over for her fighting style in Tekken 3. So let's continue on. I believe that's Jack 2 who is next. And that's a young Jane, by the way. If you don't know, Jane is one of those characters that never appears as like playable, but she's mentioned in all sorts of like canon extra game literature. Kind of morbid, right? Kind of morbid. Unfortunately, I do believe that is the canon conclusion for Jack. There's nothing to say that it didn't. Gunjack takes over for him next. And I believe that was Dr. Abel that destroyed him. Again, another character that you got to know some Tekken deep lore to know about Dr. Abel. But he's basically Dr. Boskanovich's rival in the early games. And he's just not mentioned anymore. Dude's probably dead, honestly. He was pushing like 80 or 90. Let's check out Lei Wulong, his annoyingness. Even his ending is annoying. Excuse me. Okay, these are the type of endings in Tekken that extremely annoy me. I'm going to say this is not canon and it's a vignette at the same time. Because it's basically just like Lei Wulong is introduced as this cop character who's out to capture Kazuya for his crimes, but instead of making his ending anything towards that goal or showing why he failed at it, they just give you this cute little clip of him at the shooting range, no pun intended, and he shoots out the end on a target practice page. I just don't think that happened. I mean, Lei Wulong's not going to be around shooting out the end at target practice. It's just not going to happen. Could he do it? Probably, but there's just no reason he would have. This is just a here's an ending for your trouble type ending. So I'm going to say that's non-canon. We finally arrived at a non-canon ending. So let's take a look at Jun Kazama, Purity. Which is ironic if you know what happened between her and Kazuya at the second tournament. Hopefully I don't get copyright struck for this opera music in the background. Namco has probably got that out there on a CD somewhere. May have to go back later and remove the audio here, and if so, I'm sorry. It's rather loud. I should have turned it down a little bit. So Jun Kazama basically goes full Snow White in her ending. I mean, with the squirrel on her shoulder and everything. It's kind of a shame they killed Jun off so quick, because like the mysterious power that she has is to like contain the devil gene and all that stuff is very interesting. And it's even hinted that Asuka Kazama has it too. But they just never go anywhere with it because they're so dead center focused on the Mishimas. I'm hoping that Tekken 8 story mode will have more budget, so it'll have a chance to put more characters into it. Maybe do something a little bit more like Mortal Kombat did in the newer games. But anyway, I'm going to say that's a conclusion canon ending. Basically what's going on there is Jun Kazama and Kazuya, they have a little fling. It's never really explained why, but they were intimate with each other. Jun conceives Jin Kazama, who is the devil gene is passed to. Jin goes on to become the protagonist of the series. Jun was most certainly killed by Ogre, but to keep Jun fans buying Tekken games, Harada and Murray refused to admit it. Although I guess you could make the argument, since Harada says she's just missing, that's word of God, and therefore canon that she's just missing. Whatever, you'll never convince me that wasn't Jun Kazama's head. Sorry, Jun fans. But long story short, she goes back to the mountains to live on her own and raise Jin, who she would assumedly, I assume, is pregnant with at the time this ending takes place. But this is what happens to Jun Kazama before she is killed or rendered missing by Ogre. If she's not missing, why isn't she taking care of her son or trying to find him? She's dead, fam, until they bring her back. I hope they do. Bump, if you're out there watching, I know you miss Mama Kazama. And to be fair, I love her a lot more than I do Asuka. Asuka is annoying. She's stupid, annoying. She contributes nothing to the plot. Her rivalry with Lily is dumb. Get rid of Asuka Kazama if you're not going to use her. Bring back Jun. Jun was infinitely more interesting. So I have an interesting take in that argument. I think she's dead while at the same time wanting her back. Anyway, let's watch Best Boy, Lee Chaolan. Let's watch his ending. And you could see the thank you for playing up there on the sign, and you instantly know that this is probably not canon. I like how it has an obey on the desk. I've never noticed that before. Every time they show like the main office of the Mishima Zaibatsu, it's different, I swear. Anyway, unfortunately, as cool as this would be, this is a non-canon ending. This certainly did not happen. Lee got stomped by Kazuya in the first tournament and Heihachi in the second tournament. So he did not take over the Mishima Zaibatsu and imprison Kazuya and Heihachi. What a different game it would have been if he had. What the series would have been like. Harada actually mentioned that somebody threatened the safety of the Namco Bandai office at one point because they didn't include Lee in Tekken 3, which is surprising to me that Lee had that kind of fan base because he was just kind of a Law clone at this point with some of his own moves. But it's good to know Lee was always popular. I wasn't the only one maining Lee in 1994. So let's move on to Kuma, Mr. Bear himself. Paul Killer. And if you remember the last video, this is a straight up parody of Paul's ending in Tekken 1. It's even got the same background image in it. Okay, so I'm going to say that this is another vignette, and this is canon. I think this takes place before Tekken 2, I think. Because in Tekken 1, we can assume that Paul defeated Kuma, because Kuma wants revenge. So that's why he's trying to... Anyway, let's take a look at Kuma. Let's take a look at his wiki page just to make sure we know what we're saying here. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Kuma was defeated by Paul Phoenix easily in Tekken 1. And so basically Kuma's whole reason for entering the second tournament was to defeat Paul. I would assume Paul won again because Paul was in the finals. So I would assume that Paul won that fight. It doesn't really matter because Kuma 1 dies between Tekken 2 and 3. Unfortunately, he's a bear. He died of old age. Anyway. Wang Jinrei. Wang Jinrei is underappreciated in the Tekken series, in my opinion. The old Chinese martial art master is a fun trope. Wang Jinrei is an overall good dude. I can't read the Japanese there. Would somebody who can tell me if that says Jinpachi Mishima? I don't know the kanji that well. I see Mishima in there, I think, but... My kanji, I've just forgotten all of my kanji since college, unfortunately. Back to the spreadsheet lab again, yo. This is another story, and I want to say this is canon, assuming that is not Heihachi's grave or something. If it's Heihachi's grave, then no way, not canon. Heihachi is still alive until the events of Tekken 7. Spoiler. Wang Jinrei and Jinpachi were super good friends, and it was the whole reason Wang Jinrei was even messing around with Tekken, was to bring honor back to it for Jinpachi's sake. So I'm going to assume whether this was before the tournament, after the tournament, whatever, he went to pour one out for his buddy Jinpachi. You know, is either a "I'll do it for you, friend," or "I'm sorry I failed." We were talking about this at Locals the other day. I really wish, or maybe it was in stream. I don't remember. It was stream. It was not Locals. I really wish Wang Jinrei's ending had been canon in Tekken 5. I wish he had won that tournament. That would have been an interesting spin, but they just had to give it to Jin, as always. Anyway, Armor King. The best king. So a bit of a somber thing. This is a conclusion canon ending for Armor King. Armor King 1 has a heart problem or an illness of some sort. I'm not sure why he was bleeding with a heart condition, unless it was supposed to be coming from his red eye that King injured. But Armor King 1 basically has to retire from fighting due to his health issues, and then that later allows Craig Marduk to overtake him in a bar brawl, leading to his death. That's the first Armor King. And so this is a conclusion. Canon ending. Who knows what happened in the tournament, but he definitely became ill and had to retire from fighting, and that was presumably his last match or something like that. Anyway, let's check out Best Kunoichi Kunimitsu, who was trying to steal Yoshimitsu's sword in this game. That tombstone said Manji something. I don't know what the kanji was, but it said, the hiragana definitely said Manji. It could be Yoshimitsu's grave for all we know. Okay, unfortunately that ending is not canon at all. Not canon. I wish. It is definitely a what if, like Li Chaolan's. Kunimitsu lost to Yoshimitsu. He did not kill her, obviously, because she went on to have a daughter, and who participates in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7. If Kuni had got the sword, no doubt that's what she would have done with it, was gone and tried it out before giving it to her grandfather. But that's the end for Kuni for a while. We don't hear from Kunimitsu until her daughter joins the scene, literally 20 years later in Tekken 7. So let's move on to Anna. Hopefully I do not get YouTube jailed for this one. Man, she has a shower with a door on it. How legit is that? It's very Japanese style. My host family had a door like that. Yeah, look at those 1994 CGI feet. I'm pretty sure there's some subs out there that really like that kind of thing. And so Nina comes in and takes a picture of her to humiliate her. You know, it really seems to me like Nina is the jerk in this relationship, because Anna's usually just trying to mind her own business, find her shoe, visit her dad's grave, and Nina's always the one pulling guns on her and taking pictures of her and that kind of stuff. Their early relationship, they're just kind of jerks to each other. It's in the later games they start trying to kill each other. But anyway, let's say this is another vignette, and it is, I would assume this is canon. There's no reason to think that this couldn't have happened. This is probably just some incident at the tournament. Nina snuck in to embarrass little Anna, her sister. So, Ganryu, one of my least favorite characters in Tekken. This one is a tricky one because we don't really know what it implies. Maybe if you're Japanese or a sumo fan, you could enlighten me. It could be a vignette, it could be a what if. Because if they're implying that Ganryu regained his honor as a sumo and went back to sumo wrestling and became champion, obviously did not happen. Ganryu never really had success in the ring again, at least far as I know. All Tekken knowledge of him says. He spends most of his game opening restaurants and trying to pursue the Chang mother and daughter, which is very creepy if you think about it. This is a really tough one. You know, if he's just like at the sumo arena, just like practicing, it's just a vignette. But if that photo at the end implies he's like a great sumo champion, then that's certainly not true. Let's call it a vignette, and let's call it partially canon. The implication that Ganryu has regained his honor somehow is completely not true. He's still a corrupt loser in my mind. But he's, you know, this could have happened. He could have gone out to the ring and just like had a Field of Dreams moment by himself if he'd so chosen to. Prototype Jack, one of the weakest characters in the series. That's one of those screw you endings, but it is canon, and it is a conclusion to Prototype Jack's story. If you look at the literature for Tekken 2, Prototype Jack was basically hanging around the Mishima Zaibatsu begging Kazuya to fix him up, and Kazuya found him annoying and basically told Boscanovich do whatever with him. Turned out he had some screws loose, he tried to fly, he blew up. That's it. We don't ever hear from Prototype Jack in the canon ever again. Obviously, he's in Tekken Tag 2, non-canon, Tag 1, non-canon. That's just the end for Prototype Jack. I doubt we ever see or hear from that character again. Not without a major overhaul. There's just really no point for him to come back, sadly. As interesting as he was. Let's check out Bruce Irving. Man, I miss this dude. He was a cool dude. So Bruce is over here putting on a show with the punching bag for the hopeful young boy looking on. Look at this thumbs up. Just a very typical Tekken 2 ending. This is another story, like little slice of life type ending. We'll say it's canon. There's nothing that would say that Bruce didn't at one point show off for some kid watching him practice. Bruce is an excellent kickboxer, so there's no reason he couldn't have. I'm going to call it canon. Obviously, this would have taken place before the tournament, probably, because you know, he was amnesiac and working for Kazuya during the events of Tekken 2, and there was some like weirdness that goes on between there and 5, where he ends up working for the Mishima Zaibatsu again, and then Tekken 7 just completely forgets about him because budget reasons, and they shoved him into Tekken Mobile, which is now dead. So thank you, Bandai Namco, for that. And for Josie Rizal, who I don't care what 16-bit Bump thinks is a subpar replacement for Bruce Irving. Actually, he probably agrees with that, even though he plays Josie. Rip. Anyway, let's take a look at Baek Dosan, another clone character that came back for Tekken 5 that they immediately did away with when they got to 7. This is the guy that trained Hwarong, by the way, for all you young bucks and lasses out there. That's young Baek and his dad, by the way. That's not martial law. Basically, Baek's whole thing in this game is he basically goes on a rampage because he accidentally killed his dad or something, and goes and tears up martial law's dojo, and so they have to fight at the King of Iron Fist tournament too. Yeah, we'll go ahead and be generous and call this a conclusion canon, because I'm certain after the tournament, Baek kind of made peace with what had happened, and I think that's kind of what that's supposed to signify, that this was an accident. I need to move on with my life. I love my dad, and he would forgive me because we had a good relationship. Unfortunately, the whole rivalry with Law is never finished. It's never given any closure. Instead, let's have Paul chase aliens and people throw each other off cliffs for the next 3 games. Anyway, what do we got next? Looks like Roger. And this is done like a Jack Hanna nature documentary. There's a sign that says Roger won. So if you play during Tekken 5, you know Roger Jr., that's the character's dad and the ex-husband, I guess, of Roger Jr.'s mother, who's the one that actually does the fighting. I'm going to say this is partially canon because I don't think there was a sign up there that said Roger won. I don't think there was some nature documentary about Roger. But Roger did go on to sire Roger Jr. and have a family after Tekken 2. That's canon, as goofy as it is. So yeah, this is kind of a partially canon conclusion to Roger's story, at least for the time being. Hopefully Roger Jr. can come back for Tekken 8. Although instead of him, I'd rather have this guy, honestly. This is the one I always played as. I never cared for Roger, but Alex was super cool. So you got Alex studying the fossil record here, trying to learn about his ancestry. Yes. My tongue doesn't move because 90 CGI. Yay! Yep, that's just a little conclusion canon. Alex has never heard from beyond this, so it can be assumed he just went out to live in the wild and be a wild boy. Somewhere out there in the wild. Until something comes along to contradict this, we really have nothing else to say about Alex, unfortunately. He was in the tag games, but again, those are non-canon. So now we get into some of the final boss type stuff. You actually have to scroll down because Tekken 2 has so many characters. Kazuya Mishima, the best character in the game, gameplay wise. So even though Kazuya can turn into Devil during the events of Tekken 2, Devil splits into a separate entity that functions autonomously of Kazuya, it's really bizarre. Just go with it. Even though he's partly still in Kazuya, it's kind of a mess. So Kazuya continues the trend of betraying his father and not helping him out when they fight together ever so how briefly. Ever so how briefly. I don't know if that makes sense. This ending is squarely a what if. It would be if Kazuya had defeated Heihachi and Devil, which he did not. That just didn't happen. There's too much to contradict that. No argument there. That did not happen. It's a what if for Kazuya players who beat the game with him. Let's check out Devil's ending. Oh boy, another tough one to deal with. We'll say it's a what if, not canon. Just because we know Devil was defeated, Kazuya was thrown inside a volcano. The tournament would have taken place within the Mishima Zaibatsu's headquarter office space area. That's where Kazuya and Heihachi fought, I believe. So there's just no reason this can be canon. Devil would not have escaped from the Mishima Zaibatsu and flew off into the night. I suppose you could make the argument that this is the part of Devil that left Kazuya, but Devil, Kazuya has full control of his Devil form. The Devil gene kind of passed on to Jin. I just don't think that this happened. Devil was certainly defeated. I don't think this was a canon ending. Devil, it didn't end well for Devil. He lost his physical form after this. So let's check out Angel, the ever mysterious Angel. I think what this is trying to imply, especially because this is mainly the good guy characters in the game, is that basically they all came together and united against Devil, and Angel destroyed him. And presumably this would be Kazuya's soul, which she sets free. That's my take on it anyway. And this is unfortunately a non-canon what if. Angel is never heard from again. I think Arata has brought her up on Twitter a few times, but that was the last we saw of Angel. It's unclear whether she was like the good part of Kazuya, she had something to do with Jun Kazama. Ultimately, she was just a palette swap for Devil so that you wouldn't have a mirror match for the last boss. I think that's really why they did that. Anyway, guys, that's all for Tekken 2. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about each ending, if you disagreed with me, if you have a source which directly contradicts my own reasoning and thoughts. Please let me know below. Maybe at the end of all these we can do a recap and figure out where we went wrong, where we were right, where we could have adjusted a little bit. Tekken 2 was pretty easy. There wasn't just a whole lot of these that gave me a lot of like, did that happen or did it not? So we got it, guys. We got it. Anyway, this has been exploring the canonicity of Tekken endings, Tekken 2. Join us next time when we do Tekken 3. Take care, everybody. Have a great 4th. If you're fellow Americans like me, God bless. Have a great 4th of July holiday. Celebrate safely. Don't blow anything up. Unless it's supposed to blow up. In which case, go ahead. America.